this day and age, of course, with the transfer portal, it's tougher to project and predict a team's success, strengths and weaknesses in February than it's ever been. But that said, as we approach spring practice, your thoughts about 22 and what are the potential concerns for a team that's going to be rather talented and, of course, in the national picture?
Yeah, well, here's the thing, Mark. I think the biggest concern at this point in time is probably the offensive line based on the way that they performed in 2021. And they bring in some reinforcements in the year 2022. The Cal transfer, McCade Mattier, was a 3-year starter out there. He probably projects as an immediate replacement for Marquise Hayes at left guard. But that's still a position group that people are going to have to see some improvement from in order to buy that this team is not going to experience a significant drop-off and be able to maintain their double-digit win pace every single year the way that they have been since 2015, the first year that Lincoln Riley got there as offensive coordinator. Last time Oklahoma failed to win double-digit games in a season, well, the COVID year notwithstanding when they went 9-2, but they've consistently been a top 10 program year in and year out, going all the way back to 2014. So I think it's really not that difficult to believe that this team isn't going to experience a significant drop-off. But if that's going to happen, if the Sooners are going to win 10, 11, 12, even 13 games next year, they're going to have consistent offensive line play up front. They're going to have to protect Dillon Gabriel. And also, I think you're going to have to – people are going to figure out real quick what type of quarterback Dillon Gabriel really is, because – he was outstanding over his 3 seasons at UCF. One of the more productive quarterbacks across the country, 70-14 touchdown to interception ratio. So that's a guy that will keep the ball out of harm's way. But obviously, he's never gone up against Power 5 talent week in and week out. And with his former offensive coordinator, Jeff Lebby, at the controls for Oklahoma as the offensive coordinator, there is some familiarity there. And there is some reason for optimism that there won't be a huge drop-off offensively for Oklahoma. Obviously, the defense is going to get better. It's Brent Venables. If you look at his defenses statistically over the course of his career, and particularly over the course of his career at Clemson in the last decade, the guy's got a top 25 defense every single year. And in most cases, he's got a top 10 defense. So I expect that the Sooners are going to take a massive jump on the defensive side of the football, and they will be much more capable of winning games. I guess I'll put it this way. They will be able to win games with their defense as opposed to simply not losing games with their defense going forward. And if this team is going to contend for a Big 12 championship, which I believe they are, it starts up front with the offensive line. It starts with Dillon Gabriel at the quarterback position and getting engaged on exactly what he brings to the offense and the way that you need to scheme to best complement what he brings to the table and scheme to his success. And then you also got to figure out who the replacement for Kennedy Brooks is going to be in the backfield. And I don't think that's something that's probably being talked about enough, Mark, is who's going to be the bell cow in the Sooners backfield. And I'm convinced that at least for this year, it's going to be more of a committee approach, the likes of which we've seen before from Oklahoma in the past. Eric Gray was immensely productive in his 2 seasons at Tennessee before transferring to Oklahoma in the spring of 2021. He's the guy that probably projects as the one that heads up that backfield committee in the year 2022. Everybody's kind of waiting to see when Marcus Major is going to break out, because it seems like he's a guy that's gotten plenty of preseason buzz for 3 years now and has never really lived up to the billing. They bring in a couple freshmen in Gavin Sawchuk and Javante Barnes. I am really high on Barnes. I think he could have a very immediate impact for this team and could end up being maybe the most productive freshman running back at Oklahoma since Trey Sermon back in 2017. So I'm curious to see how things shake out and how the load is divided among those running backs. I would bet on Gray and Barnes probably comprising about 80 to 85% of that workload. You'll get a few touches for Major. Gavin Sawchuk will probably get a few touches here and there, but it comes down to how do you replace the 7 yards per carry that you're losing in Kennedy Brooks? And granted, Lebby's offense isn't going to be as run heavy as Lincoln Riley's was, but college football really hasn't changed in the sense that you have to have a consistent running game in order to be successful, Mark. And I know a couple of years ago, Tua Tagovailoa and Joe Burrow came along, and it really seemed like the game was being revolutionized at that point. And the spread was taking over, and you didn't need a dynamic running back anymore in order to have success. And things have really regressed to the mean in that capacity over the last couple of years. And so Oklahoma is going to have to establish a consistent running game, regardless of what their offensive scheme looks like under Jeff Levy. So I think that's the two biggest questions for me are the offensive line and the running back position. And I'm just curious more than anything else to see just how good Dylan Gabriel is going to be at the Power 5 level.